who've endorsed more than 3,000 campaigns and helped elect more than 1,600 young people to local offices in 49 states plus DC. Not a hobby.
Not a hobby, no. Thank you so much for joining me. Can you introduce yourself to the audience?
I'm Amanda Littman. I'm one of the co-founders and the president of Run for Something. Run for Something recruits and supports young, diverse leaders running for local office all across the country.
I've spoken with you before, but in case people aren't familiar, how can you give a little bit more background about Run for Something? When did y'all start?
So I worked for Hillary for 2 years before this, and about a week after Election Day in 2016, I started from hearing from people I'd gone to high school and college with. Hey, Amanda, I'm a public school teacher in Chicago. I'm thinking about running for office. What do I do? Who do I call? You're the only person that I know that works in politics. What do I do? And at the time, if you were young and newly excited about politics and wanted to do more than vote and more than volunteer, there was nowhere you could go that would answer your call. And that to me felt like a symptom of really big problems, both in the Democratic Party, but also in our democracy. So I reached out to a whole bunch of people with an idea. What if we started an organization to solve this problem? One of those folks became my co-founder, a guy named Ross Morales Raqueto. We wrote a plan, we built a website, and we launched Run for Something on Trump's first inauguration day, thinking, what a fun hobby this will be. We'll get 100 people in the first year. This will be like our side project. We had 1,000 people sign up in the first week. As of today, we're up to just about 250,000 young people who've ever raised their hands to say they want to run. We've endorsed more than 3,000 campaigns and helped elect more than 1,600 young people to local offices in 49 states plus DC. Not a hobby.
Not a hobby, no. So I want to do kind of a retrospective. Now that we have some distance from the elections at the beginning of November, I know y'all had a really great night that
Mhm.
night. So the party did in general. Democrats won big across the country, but people seem to focus entirely on Virginia and Jersey, which is a mistake, I think.
Mhm.
So tell us a little bit about what kind of results your candidates got.
So we had 222 candidates on the ballot 2 weeks ago. We're still waiting on results for one final race where ballots are being cured. We had 10 candidates moving to runoffs. We had 142 outright wins. That is incredible, including 42 red to blue flips. We flipped
Yes.
42 seats, almost a third of the total races we engaged in. We were flipping seats. Let me tell you about a couple of these. In Aurora, Colorado, which actually you spoke with Allie Jackson,
Definitely.
one of our favorites, but we also had two other candidates running for the Aurora City Council out in Colorado. This is a race where the city council is deeply conservative, and some of the folks on it made Aurora into national and international news. You'll remember from talking to Allie, specifically by claiming that immigrants were coming to ruin the town and Trump needed to come and protect them. They lost their seats because actually what people cared about was affordability and taxes and schools. And Allie, along with others, helped do that. We helped Andrew Harbaugh, a former Republican who left the party after January 6th, flip control on a seat in the Clarion Borough Council, which is in a county that Trump won 70-30 in rural Pennsylvania. He's a sports journalist and a dad of two, including a young kid with special needs, for whom the cuts to Medicaid and to the Department of Education were deeply personal. We helped a veteran and union leader Taylor Ramett, who's now in a runoff, come in first in a three-way race. Hard to say. Taylor Ramett, who was running against two billionaire-backed Republicans, one of whom is an executive at Patriot Mobile, which is the cell phone company slash PAC that supports Christian nationalist candidates across the state of Texas. Taylor got 48%. So with just a couple points shy in a state Senate race that Trump won that district by 17 points. That doesn't even get into some of the amazing folks we helped elect, like Kelsey Bond, a union leader and an activist for working families who just want a seat on the Atlanta City Council, or Lily Franklin, a farmer and like fifth generation Virginian who won out in rural Virginia against Chris Obenshane, a despicable Republican. Lily, who ran once in 2023 and came less than 200 votes shy of flipping that seat. This time around, she handily beat him. Just these incredible young leaders across the country who were really focused on the things people care about and were
Yeah.
able to communicate that in a way that made sense to their voters, won these long shot races all across the country.
I think I think that to me, that last thing you just said was the sort of lesson, the overarching lesson of election night, because so much of the horse race narrative that the media engages in when they were covering it was that Like, who was going to win by more, Mamdani or Spamberger? And what does that mean for the future of the party? Progressives versus moderates, blah, 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 blah. And I think that's just useless framing because, to my mind, the people who won were the people who just talked about what the voters wanted to hear about, like cared about. And
Well,
the sort of, I'm a progressive with a capital P kind of didn't really matter.
no, and also most voters don't have like a term to describe their ideology because most voters don't have ideologies. They have problems they care about and they want government to fix it. They have things that bother them, they have things they are hopeful about, and they have people that they're showing up to vote for. That is what representing candidates do better than, you know, the usual, I guess I would say, not better than anyone, but better than the norm, is that they so clearly make their campaigns not about them, but about why voters should want them to win, about what voters will get if they win, how they can see their lives changing. I think it's so powerful.
Is that something that that people just come to with, like, they naturally gravitate to run for something because they are those sorts of candidates? Or is that something that you, like, help them come to, like, develop the skills to do?
I would say a little bit of both, but we're really precise with candidates, and especially when we do candidate training and we work about your message and your campaign. Like the three questions we really want every candidate to be able to answer: what is the problem you care about solving? How does the office you're running for give you power to solve it? Like you have to tell that
Mm.
story of I care about teacher pay. That's why I'm running for school board, which can change teacher pay. But most importantly, why should voters want you to win? You got to make it about them, not about you. You want to win because winning is great and losing sucks. Voters want you to win because you're going to make their lives better. You're going to do something concrete they can feel. And that's also the perk of working in local elections like Run for Something does. Because I do think it's one of the underrated things, even as we're talking about Mamdani and Spanberger and Mikey Sherrill and others, because they were running for state or local office, they actually have oversight. They can actually govern. They actually can deliver things. Like Mikey Sherrill was able to talk about utility fees and rate hikes because she can do something about that. That's the kind of thing where I think our federal candidates in 2026 are going to have a hard time, which is why, and I know you and your audience know this better than anyone, we got to put the megaphone on the state and local folks who will really be able to tell a story about what they'll be able to deliver.
Yeah, and, I think, not to be tinfoil hatty about it, this isn't a conspiracy theory, this is documented, but, like, the Republican Party has been so intentional about
Mm.
flipping state and local governments because that is the foundation of political power. And I don't think that the Democrats are particularly good at understanding that. Like, we like to turn out when we're pissed off about Donald Trump, but we don't necessarily, although we did on Tuesday, turn out when there is something to vote for or some sort of long-term plan to consolidate power and to build a functional party. Like, we don't have any infrastructure.
No, I mean, Run for Something has been around for 9 years. This was our ninth election year. Our budget this year is like, $8-ish million. The comparable Republican version of our organization is a thing called the Leadership Institute, which has been around since the 70s. Their budget this year is $50 million. Like, it's not even apples to apples. It's apples to apple seeds. It's apples to like apple core. It's so far removed from how our party has been able to build infrastructure and long term power. Because you're right, we get excited by the flashy things at the top of the ticket and forget the rest of it that actually
Mm.
enables us to win the big elections. Like, imagine what might be possible if we had more state legislatures, city councils, and school boards in some of these deep red places. We could probably make them not so deep red.
Yeah. What do you attribute that to? Like, why are Republicans better at thinking in a long-term strategic way than we are? Like, what is that? I have no theory. So,
I have some theories too. I think part of it is the way that their money moves. I think Republican donors, we joke like, oh, they get their tax cuts and their judges and they're happy. But like they do, they get their tax cuts and their judges and they're happy. It's good for their bottom line. At least they think so when their investment pays off. So they're
yeah.
willing to do 5 and 10 and 20-year investments in things like media companies, like organizers, like Turning Points USA, like Americans for Prosperity, like the Leadership Institute. Because at the end of the day, the amount that they spend on it more than pays for itself when they get their tax cuts and their judges. Democratic donors, you give because it feels good, because it's flashy or exciting, or you're mad and you want to solve a problem. That doesn't is not conducive to like a 20-year investment that probably doesn't pay off till year 18.
Yeah, that makes sense. So since Tuesday, have y'all had any kind of surge in signups
So we
since
have
we had a big
five
success?
we have 5,000 people sign up to run for office in the week after
Jesus
the election.
Christ.
It's like air though. The actual one of the biggest surges, we had a big number like Tuesday night going into Wednesday, and then it like evened out for a couple days. And then on Sunday, when news broke that Senate Democrats caved in the fight over the shutdown, more than 1,200 people signed up in that day. People were pissed. They want leaders who will fight. And they just saw proof that when we give Democratic voters someone to vote for, they'll show up. So I'm excited. We've got 75,000 people in the last year, more than we had in the entirety of Trump's first term.
That's crazy. I mean, it makes sense though. Yeah. So what are you thinking about how Democrats should move with this momentum going into 2026? I mean, we're getting into the holidays, so people will probably take a breather, but then after that, I mean, the primaries have functionally already started for the
That's
midterms,
right.
and I know that's not your Congress isn't necessarily your bag, but what are your thoughts on that? Sustaining momentum.
So we are making sure that folks are ready to run in as many places as we can. Because I think what we saw earlier this month is that the battlefields can be expansive, that anywhere and everywhere could become a battleground. And especially as we see some of these maps that might change, redistricting still could play out a little bit, and the fall of the Voting Rights Act could totally upend maps across the South.
Yeah.
We got to be prepared to field great candidates everywhere and to have local candidates organizing while the top of the ticket figures itself out. Like some of these congressional maps aren't going to get figured out until pretty far down the road. We cannot count on them to be doing the kind of communicating we need. So, Run for Something is going to be working to get candidates on the ballot. The first filing deadlines for 2026 are actually this December in Texas.
Mm.
So, it's recruitment season right now, and it is not too late to sign up to run for office. It's definitely not too early, but it's not too late. And in most places, you'll have a little bit of time, but especially in Texas and Wisconsin and elsewhere, it's time to get on the ballot.
So if people are interested in running for a local office, what's the first thing they should think about or ask themselves?
What's the problem I care about solving? Like, what is the
Mm,
thing that keeps me up at night that I'm yelling about with my friends, that I'm ranting about when I'm stuck in traffic? Like, what is the problem in my community that I care about? And then ask yourself what office would give you power to solve it. Everything else about a campaign is logistics, and Run for Something can help you figure out those logistics. Like, how do you get on the ballot? How do you raise money? How do I talk to voters? How do I knock to all of that is hard work, but it's not rocket science. We
yeah.
will give you the guides and the templates and the coaching and the training and the community to do it. All you have to do is be willing to do the work and be willing to listen. Not that
So
hard.
I don't like Donald Trump is not a good reason
It's not enough to
necessarily.
sustain how hard a campaign is. Like, that's really the thing is it's so hard. It is. I never want to bullshit anyone. Running for office is really hard. It's not glamorous. You're not going to make any money. You're probably going to lose because most first-time candidates lose. So you got to be in it for something deeper than just Orange Man bad. That's not to
Yeah.
say that Orange Man isn't bad. Very bad. But if you're going to change your life, because in many ways running for office is changing your life, you got to be driven by something more than that.
Yeah. Um, this is I wasn't planning on asking you this, but since you're talking about like first time candidates, it's so hard and you focus on young people. I've been watching like things that have come out about, Graham Plattner's Reddit and Tyler
Mhm.
Rico's who he follows on Instagram. Things that I don't
Yeah.
think anyone our age actually
No,
really gives kind of a shit about.
no.
Because we all have digital skeletons in our closet. But I think that as more millennials come through your org and Gen Z and
Yeah.
start running for office, that's going to be a bigger problem because we all have embarrassing Tumblr posts that just live out there that we've forgotten about. So is that something that y'all have started like where does that fit into the math? Do you tell people how to handle that? Like, how should people who want to run for office who were scared about, like, well, I was a Republican and I've got Facebook posts from 2001 that someone's going to dig up and try to get me canceled? Well, how do we think about that?
Just think about make sure you know what's out there. Like you can do a pretty good like self audit, little self research, and then figure out how you're going to incorporate it into your story. You should assume that everything you've ever posted, everything you've ever put online will be dug up and amplified by your opponent in the worst possible framing. So how can you own it? Like if you have posts about where you were a Republican once, great, that's part of your campaign story. I was a Republican, I've seen the light. I changed my mind. Here's how I changed my mind. We've worked with candidates who have had drug problems, been incarcerated, been homeless, had debt, divorce, DUIs, like all kinds of things that you think would be disqualifiers. But because they're able to tell a story of like, here's something real that I have gone through, here's what I've learned from it, here's how that'll actually make me a better leader because of what I've learned. People will forgive a lot. I mean, I was saying this with Trump. Unfortunately, people will
Yeah.
forgive a lot. They do not like being lied to and they do not like being bullshit. And so
Yeah.
one of the things that Run for Something does in our endorsement process is ask us, like, because we ask people, hey, we're going to do a background check and we're going to do a social media script. What are we going to find?
Mm,
People don't always
that
know,
makes
but,
sense.
like, we wanna make sure you're being honest because when you're asking someone for their vote, you should respect them enough to be on the level with them about who you are and what you believe.
Yeah, agreed. That's good advice. Well, thank you so much and congrats on your big night and good luck in the
Thank
future.
you. And thank you
Thanks.
to your entire community for stepping up for Run for Something. It just means so much to us.